around 17. And I can remember.
You see, once again, a pretty girl on a serial killer show as another pretty girl that's been whacked. Why has this pretty girl got whacked? Why has she been killed? Because they're pouncing and stalking and scrounging and creating fake relationships. And then eventually they have to, when they get to a certain point, they have to make this illusion that they're in some type of abusive financial relationship with this person. And the complex network of parallel contracts and parallel realities that they've created over the money that they think they can get out of them. And there's this beautiful girl or this star, whoever it is, caught in the middle of this, and then they have to reinforce and validate the whole thing through some type of attack, sexual attack, when they're subdued or paralyzed, and create the false reality that the entire bullshit story that they've created is real. And that's a rape that they have to do that on. Some reason it turns to rape. I don't know why. Some type of loophole in relationship laws or something where they rape people, and then somehow that's supposed to mean that they're in a consensual relationship, for whatever the terms are that they created out of that, in prostitution or something, right? But what they're actually doing is fixated on stalking anonymous, random people, as far as I'm concerned, who have no relationship. They have no consent for any type of agreement in any form whatsoever, in anything that you need consent for. They don't have that. And they've created this false reality of some form of abusive relationship, and they're sitting around all the time waiting for the window to be open when I go to sleep, or waiting for the front door to be unlocked, you know, when I'm asleep or subdued. And they're using complex psychiatric abuse methods, you know, to subdue somebody to a point where they are completely defenseless, and then they can create the illusion of some type of abusive relationship to reinforce to the people around them and to whoever their parties are, and even to the authorities, that they are in some abusive, controlling relationship where they financially are having some exploitation or some availment to their abuse. Now, every day I say they don't have consent for a relationship. They don't have consent to be on their media. They don't have consent, whoever these people are in the recording environment. They don't have any consent for anything. They have no contract for anything. They have no implied conduct to anything they've ever said. There is no relationship. There is nothing in any legal position that might go missing. There is absolutely no connection between me and these people whatsoever. I don't know who they are. But they, whomever these people are, they call themselves little voices coming out the walls and down the end of the street, you know, so they're pretending to be a hallucination, you see.
In an area he called his garden. For reasons even his defence team never discovered, it was to Anne Howard that he would...
And so what happens is, where it starts off as a silly mistake that may appear as just something that doesn't, it's not even criminally viable, it's not even civilly viable for some reason. I mean, you can't even take civil action against them, you know, for whatever reason, because they've never even said anything. And so when the abusive attack takes place, which is what it builds up to an abusive attack.
Hey, Bill.
And then when I say no, and I publicly say no, and in a recording and whatnot, goes to the police, I say I did not consent to this, I'm not a gay man, I've had no fucking relationship over the last 20 years or so, any type of sexual act or any type of criminal sexual, any type of sexual act over the last 20 years, because I've not been in a relationship, is criminal with a man or woman or whomever. Okay, and they don't have the relationship that they say that they do. Okay, they don't have an abusive financial relationship. They nothing's been consented to, nothing's been agreed to. Once it gets to this position, they're looking at a life sentence for sex offences, okay, and torture. And I'll go into why it's sex offences and torture a little bit later. And so now they're thinking they're going to start getting nasty, and instead, when the doors open this time, they're not going to come in and create the illusion of a financially abusive relationship, which they don't have. Just so you're clear, there's no way they can. It would be duress anyway, you know.
Discovered sex workers.
But the point is, now they're going to start thinking about murder. Because they're put into a legal position now, or whenever the letters go out to find out who they are, and the letter goes out and says cease and desist in all your slander and defamation, cease and desist in all your contractual activity, cease and desist in all your relationships that you've developed, because you don't have those relationships, you don't have a deal, and you've been told this consistently every day for months or years. When or if that letter ever goes out to ever find out who they are, they're going to start thinking about murder. And why are they thinking about murder? I'll tell you why. Because they're looking at a life sentence for a sex offence anyway. And so they're thinking, well, if they're going to get a life sentence for that, they've got away with sneaking in and molesting somebody, so why can't they get away with sneaking in and murdering somebody? That's the only reason why they're watching it all the time. They're not watching it, because they're your friend. They're watching it because they're a fucking serial rapist, fucking sex pest ring and website, promoting fucking serious violations of voyeurism and sex offences. Voyeurism is a complex, dangerous, deviated psychiatric sexual disease. Okay, voyeurism.
His 2 children.
And that's a fact according to Maudrey's Handbook of Psychiatry. Okay.
One friend from Virginia that I spoke to who knew both of them.
And so they start thinking about murder, but we're actually talking about serial killers here, proper, real life, right? Homebred serial killers. Okay, these are murderers. All right, and they have an obsessive, whatever it is, they have an obsessive fixation on the situation to build up long-term relationships and stalking. And so how complex does this abusive relationship that they believe, how complex is it?
Discrepancy between the way in which he...
Well, I'll tell you what they're doing, okay, and this is what's been witnessed, and this is what they're really trying to cover up, okay, is they're doing a neurological experiment, okay, neurostimulation devices, electrodes under the skin, which they're falsifying the forensic psychiatric evidence of it, to say to people and say to the world that people do not have autonomy over their own actions. They do not have free will when they're under the pressure of neurological devices, and that they've committed crimes that they're not criminally responsible for because they didn't have autonomy and they didn't have control over themselves. And that's the experiment that they're trying to get away with, so that they can say to people, if they ever commit something, that there was some neurological device or low-hanging fruit which controlled them and made them do it, and they didn't even want to do it, they didn't even know what happened. Alright?
As he drove around these neighborhoods, he was pretty...
That's what's happened, and they're trying to find a way to get away with murder, okay?
But not just any women.
That's how serious it is, but we're not just looking at, some experiment here and there, We're talking about hundreds, potentially thousands of murderers around the world who have walked into a fucking psychiatric hospital after killing somebody and been let out 4 to 6 months later without anybody asking any fucking questions or anybody even known, where it's probably been passed in some weird, prosecution fucking investigation where they've investigated and said, oh, he's got one of those implants in him and that's what made him do it, so they've let him go.
She always had a knack for...
And that's where it's starting to get dangerous, you see, because they're trying to make the government and the people who regulate these types of things and gather evidence and, build pictures of serial killers and stuff like that. They're trying to make the government comparable for the government as the system that allows people to get away with the murders, make the government comparable and accountable for those murders and those killings by saying that the government are almost co-defendant in the corruption and the activity. And so that's what I've witnessed. That's what is happening here. That's why they're trying to kill me. And they're using serial killers who are criminally insane, right? They are criminally insane if they don't think they have autonomy and they don't think they have free will. And they're using that criminal insanity.
I wouldn't talk to her.
I wouldn't say that there isn't any persuasion. I'd say there is a lot of persuasion going on.
I can't understand.
But the point
is, I
is,
didn't have that addiction.
They're trying to make these murderers believe they don't have free will. They're criminally insane, you see, and they make them believe they are being controlled. And they're coerced into situations, hatred or whatever it is, coerced them into, or they're looking at a life sentence anyway, because they are getting bumped, and their third parties are getting bumped, whoever they are, right? And they're getting done for rape, because I'm not going to consent to it. I'm not going to allow this abusive relationship. under any circumstances whatsoever. I am not agreeing to that. That is never going to happen.
He had a big rusty tool wrench. He knew what he was going to do that evening.
And so, when you see that the government and the authorities and the police are believing that they're also criminally responsible, comparable to the corruption of this experimental data that comes from falsified experimental data that makes the authorities think that these people are innocent when they're not, they're murderers, okay? When they make the government comparable for that and the government start receiving money on sales and deals thinking that it's some reality show or some type of deal with the TV or something, when it's only a sex pest fucking paedophile website who are buying ratings from the TV to make themselves appear like they're some sort of gangsters or some sort of superstars. Nobody's seen them before or even heard of them. They're perverts. The only reason why they're getting funny looks when they walk down the street is because people say that's that fucking weirdo. That's that perverted weirdo. I'll get into how they're thinking later.
That night, he would off and on rape her and
So
slip into what he would describe as
now the government feel like they're criminally responsible in some sense because they've been brought into a contract on the basis of somebody being murdered and they are comparable to a contract killing, okay, and they are party to it. Now, what they have to do is, once they've destroyed the reputation of the victim through slander and defamation of some type of implied conduct of abuse or something, then they get into the situation where they have to make a reality where I'm some sort of lunatic who's criminally insane, you know, all this abuse and what's going on can't be formally recognised by any authority because they would be held criminally responsible for historic crime or even genocide, right? Now they have to make the victims of the crime look like they're lunatics and they're trying to fight some strange hallucination of murder, you know, in self-defense, you know, and they've got this criminally insane self-defense thing. There is no abuse, there is nothing happening, right? There isn't this Black Ops murder going on that nobody can admit to because they're scared that they can't tell the public about these dangerous devices that are killing people.
But he decided he had to go through with it.
Because the forensic scientific data has been falsified, telling the authorities that people don't have any control of what they're doing. Okay? That's what I've witnessed. That's why they're trying to kill me. Right?
That's what I told myself for my own justice.
And so now they're going to be trying to build up, or this is what they've spent the last 15 years doing, is build up a false reality of some lunatic or some nutter who's in some hallucination or delusion about self-defense and is going around threatening people on some criminal insanity, you know, of self-defense about people trying to kill him.
Every
right?
single one of these victims.
And that's what they've systematically done, tried to break down and falsify the evidence and the stimulus of what I'm experiencing and the people that are potentially supposed to be involved or comparable for that abuse. And to go over it again, just so you're clear of what's happening, okay? They are creating fake sales environments in a parallel reality that I have not agreed to, I have not consented to, I have not given them any legal premise or any type of conduct or implication whatsoever. Now once they've done that, on a mistake, they have to try and find a way to validate it. And the only way they can validate it, okay, because they know when I'm conscious and I have full capacity and awareness that I'd rather fight than give them anything. So what they've done is they've developed this abusive equipment to try and subdue people, brainwash them or whatever you want to call it, or injure them to the point where they can create a fake illusion of the reality that they've created, you know, of the business reality and financial relationship that they claim they've created. Just so you're clear, these people are anonymous and random and I've never met any of them, okay? They're doing all this shit whilst I'm unconscious and, you know, trying to attack me whilst I'm unconscious. and create this fake reality. And then, essentially, this then leads to a rape. Because I'm still going to keep saying no, aren't I? So I'm still going to keep saying no, you don't have consent, you don't have a relationship. So they escalate the level of abuse, that they take it to an escalation in level of abuse, into some date raping or some type of tasering to the head, and then faking the illusion of a sexual relationship, an abusive sexual relationship that they're faking is consented to, and they're using the word whore and prostitution, believing it to be a loophole in this fake parallel reality that they've created of a relationship. And I'm saying, no, I have a serious disability. I did not want to consent to any relationship over the last 20 years with any of these people. I'm not promiscuous, I'm not a prostitute, and I didn't consent to it. I didn't want to have a relationship with them. They are not getting a deal, they are not getting any money. And now they're thinking, well, the only option they've got left now, because they're looking at a life sentence, if any of these videos come to light and get into the public domain and into the police domain, and I witness them and say, look, this shit, this is what's happening, this is what this is all about. So now they're looking at a life sentence in prison, because any form of rape is a life sentence under British law. You know, to convict people of rape is a life sentence. So what difference does a life sentence make when you're looking over your shoulder for the rest of your life, looking at a life sentence? So what difference is that life sentence to another life sentence for murder, when they don't have to look over their shoulder ever again? They can just leave the person dead, and nobody's going to say anything or admit to anything. The person's dead. It's the same fucking, you know, consequence, and the government and nobody's going to say anything historically, because they're all going to become comparable to fucking murder and corruption that led to fucking murder. Okay?
Now buried, and it was only the beginning.
After that, he tells me it was game on. Those are his words. He knew.
And so I'm in a situation where I have a fixated, obsessive, compulsive psychopaths and psychotics watching me all the time on their sex pest website. This is what it is. Serious rape. Serious rapist websites and murder websites and snuff movie websites. A snuff movie is a murder website where they watch people get murdered, you know, and they wank off whilst watching people get murdered. This is the website that I'm on, and this is who they're selling it to, and they're telling everybody they've got global TV ratings on it, right? And somehow they've weaseled their way into the TV industry and found connections that they can buy networked, complex, big-time fucking ratings that they can put on their website from out of the TV. But in reality, nobody even knows who they are. Nobody's ever seen them before. Nobody knows anything about it.
Vulnerable people who others might look at as perhaps not worth the effort, that are cast off.
So, without a murder inquiry and Howell unsuspected of involvement in the disappearance of Melanie Camillini, Howell was free to cruise in his van and look out for drug-addicted prostitutes. The motels off the Berlin Turnpike were a dangerous place for sex workers to ply their trade.
The sex worker, the abusive relationship, is a cover-up to promiscuity. I'm not promiscuous. The promiscuity is supposed to make you believe that at any point these types of implants and this type of shit could have happened and you don't know who done it. But the reality is, that's why they're trying to break in. You see, that's why they're trying to gain access, so they can say, well, this guy's a promiscuous prostitute and he's gay. I'm not gay, by the way. And then they say, whether I was or not, it's not the point, but I'm not. And so they try and say, this promiscuity is the reason for why he has all these implants. I haven't had a relationship or allowed anybody into my home for 20 years. I have not had sex, as far as I'm aware, in close to nearly 20 years, okay? People are saying they're in some type of sexual relationship, and there's prowlers sneaking around when I'm asleep, trying to say I'm in some type of sexual relationship with them, right, which I'm not and have not consented to. I don't understand. I am not even aware of anything like that. So what's actually happening is
Detectives who work
they are
cases will
trying
tell
to
you
create a
it's not
reality
about
where I'm
the
supposed to
sex,
be
it's about
paranoid
the
or
power
deluded about
and the
something
rush that they
that I
feel
can't
from
prove.
having that control over their victims.
And then
over
they're
their
using that
And I believe
reality
that
that
would be
they're
the
not
case.
allowing any
He drove
consent to
around
make it
with their
available
victims.
to the
He would have
public,
that
but they're
sex act with
pressurizing
them,
people to
whatever
make it
was.
available to the
But
public
he'd keep
so they can create this
because
false
he wanted
reality
that high
where I'm
again. He
making
wanted that
paranoid
euphoria of that
responses
feeling
to a
of
situation that live in two different distinct realities.
Fantasize about just
Maybe
living
3 or
in
4
a
different
certain
realities.
process.
You know, and any which one of any of these raids or any of the false evidence that each one of these people has picked up, any one of them, you know, how is anybody supposed to make any sense of it in court, you know?
To occur, and that's who I'm preyed upon, and I can't say it any other way.
And that's what they're doing. They're stalking women, and they're stalking men, and they're stalking people. They're building up complex relationships with people on contracts and stuff like that.
Would also go through
And then when they're told no,
drive-through
they start getting
with
nasty and they start
someone
making threats and they think they can
captive
kill
in
you
the
or
back
something. They think
of
they can
his
kill
van,
people
tied
because
up
they've
and
trapped
duct
themselves in a
taped.
long-term
And he said to me
relationship where they're going to
that he
lose
would
everything
hide
when they get
so
caught
no
out
one
and
would
people
hear
want their money
him,
back.
or hear the
You know,
victims
or
if
they're
they
forced
were
into
screaming
court for
or
whatever
crying
it is
for
they've
help.
done. So they
And
turn
during
to
that
murder to
time,
try and
he
cover
would
it up.
actually order
Now this whole
food
thing
through the
is based on
drive-through and
torture
ask
and
his
calling somebody a
victims if they
cunt,
also
right? That's what they call a
wanted
cunt,
something to
okay?
eat, which to me just shows the callousness and
And that's what they do to
absolute
women.
lack of
They do these
empathy
types of
of
things to
this
women and
man
men,
that
gay men and
these
stuff like
poor
that. And then they
women
call them a
sat held
cunt.
captive
Okay? You
on
understand
the
that's what the
back
cunt
bench.
implies.
He was
Right? That
ordering food
whole thing that I've
and
just
eating.
said.
Perhaps that was.
And so when they're criminally insane, okay, criminally insane about whether neurological devices can really harm you or harm people, right? Or, you know, without them having any control over themselves and they're not criminally responsible. They're also criminally insane on the basis that they think the comments and the statements that they make and the business that they've created, they also are criminally insane on the basis that they think that that shit is going to move through or pass off or whatever, or pass through. Whatever they think it's going to pass.
The thistles and the thorns, it's going to get harder and harder for.
And when they're
curious
really
person to
quite
just wander
acutely
back.
deluded and absolutely stubbornly set in their ways where they think that they can, no matter what anybody says to them, this type of nuisance, probably potentially very dangerous activity, they are stubbornly forcing themselves into the situation where they will never admit, right, that they don't have the right to say anything that they've said or collect or do any type of business on the basis of what they've said or done. They are stubbornly against it because their lifestyle, their business, their careers and everything is completely dependent on this deluded, fixated power control crap that's coming out of their mouth that they think they have the right to keep talking about. It is a criminally insane psychosis that thinks it has the right of authority over other people's property, other people's bodies, and other people's lives. That's the only reason. I mean, you could go to the Houses of Parliament, or you could go to whatever it is that they call in America the perfect place. That great place with all those great people in it. And they would literally all be ranting in some power-crazed crap. The same shit that I'm coming out with here and telling you, this whole reality of fact. And they think they can bully people into their version of events, right? And their specific reality that they've created. And they think they can bully and push people around into their little pornography, sex offence reality so that they are in the authority for that deal and they're in the position for that deal, and that's the historical conduct that they've created. And if they can't bully people, they'll murder them, right, to cover up their fraud.
That this man
And they try and grab the government, make the government accountable for it as well, lure the government into the little sex pest website, and now the government can't say anything. They cover everything up, all the abuse, so they don't get discovered as being involved in murders and sick things, and then they create this fake reality of this lunatic, you know, fighting against some ghosts out there, you know, that don't exist, right, for his own self-defense, and he ends up murdering somebody and goes to goes into a psychotic hospital for the rest of his life.
To get money to pay for opioid payments.
How much do you want to bet they reckon that I'm not even criminally responsible for that one if I do kill somebody, right? Because of the neurological implants done it, right?
She fell prey to this opioid crisis.
And it's not as simple, you know, as just that. Because what they're thinking is these serial killers, this criminally insane mentality that they've got. They're in some type of dream world, you know, where they're dreaming things they can't prove about murder, dreaming things about sex and sex fantasies, dreaming things that they think are facts and connected relationships, you know. Dreaming things that are nonsense. Complete abstract crap coming out of their mouth that they can't prove, but they're still verifying and trying to validate their expression and their relationship is real because they want to believe it. That's what they want, and they will refuse to listen to anybody else about the truth.
Prostituting herself on the street and falling prey to William Devon Howell.
And so, when you look at the data, when you actually look at this implant, somewhere out there, there is 20 years of some type of weird animation, right, that goes on and on, designed to hypnotize people into such a disgusting state of mental injury that they can't stand their own existence and they blow their head off in suicide or something, right? This is a systematic sensory deprivation torture experiment to make people's existence be so horrible as a nightmare that they can't stand their own thoughts, they can't stand their own existence, and so they want to commit suicide because they can't handle it. And so that's what the neck is, you see? So the neck is, they go in and they make it look like you've hanged yourself, right? And then they create this false reality of diagnosis in the system and this false reality of comorbidities with their abuse. But nobody's going to admit to their abuse taking place because there's too many people whose lives and careers and families will be destroyed if they get discovered that this is the business that they're involved in. Murder and murdering prostitutes. Okay?
Howell had some beer and
over sales crimes, over sex attacks and sales crimes and druggings and drug dealer fucking world where people are dying of fucking, you know, ODs from being sexually abused and shit, right? And so the comorbidity of A, abuse, with B, underlying conditions that could be potentially terminal, such as heart conditions, stroke conditions, epileptic fits, anything that's potentially lethal, okay, they are experimenting with their abuse technology so that when you go to a doctor or you go to a professional and you say to them, I'm suffering from these symptoms, none of the government's going to admit to any of this abuse taking place. So nobody's going to admit openly to the fact that these symptoms are really because of abuse of people trying to kill you, okay, through walls with different non-kinetic energy devices and stuff like that, or neurological implants that are affecting your heart and your brain, okay? Nobody in the government's going to admit to it because they think if anybody finds out there's this fucking device that gives people a fucking get-out-of-jail-free card when they murder somebody, nobody's going to admit to that. Nobody's going to admit to letting thousands of murderers back into the streets and back into communities, you know. So what happens is the diagnosis with the specialists in the NHS, they build up a repertoire of a complex diagnosis with the medical professionals of mental health, of being a lunatic, of having heart conditions, having seizures, and then, oh no, out of nowhere, inexplicably, it just looks like some kind of, you know, accident or some type of natural causes death, you know. And this is what they're going to keep attacking and attacking and attacking until they cause something like that. And somebody dies of an epileptic fit, and then that's it, they're out of the way, you know. And if that doesn't work, then they go for stranglings and they try and make it look like a suicide. And everything that you can see about this whole situation is building up fake diagnostic parameters with the police, with the authorities, with the social services, with the families, and building up this entire parallel, fake, fraudulent reality of serious potential life-threatening disorders,
complete the Howell kill list.
which these life-threatening disorders are just a comorbidity with abuse. I am healthy. I am not going to kill myself under any circumstances. I'm not going to harm anybody unless it is really in self-defense. No matter how difficult that is to prove, I will prove it and prove that this long-term intent to kill me, and I will act in self-defense to stop it when I can prove that it's happening and that they refuse to stop doing it. Okay?
Tell you the truth. I mean, and I tell them that.
And so the comorbidity factor with the abuse and the terminal illness is, this is what they're trying to do. So it takes a systematic breakdown of long-term obsessive fixations to analyse those neurological signals and neurological analysis to pick up stuff like heartbeats, to pick up stuff like frequency associated with strokes and epilepsy. And so these people, whoever these people are who are implanted and under this type of, extensive medical experiment genocide, are being observed and systematically broke down. So eventually, at some point, they can just be killed and put away and killed and put down as some death by natural causes, so they don't get caught in what they're doing. Why are they doing it? Why do they need this relationship? Why do they need to say that they're involved in some relationship or some position of legal authority over some value? Why do they need to say it? Because I haven't discovered anything.
Became a roadblock.
I know I have a completely different set of values to these people. I haven't discovered anything. I've asked questions to people. I've asked all the questions that I'd be required to ask legally. And I've tried to take a recording of them, but the recordings don't always play out very well. And I've discovered nothing from anybody. I've discovered nothing about any business deal or any type of anything like that. Nobody has told me a damn fucking thing in 20 years. They have done a completely anonymous, silent, uncommunicated, weird, erroneous, abstract type fucking inchoate conduct, implication of conduct that I don't understand and I refuse to allow as some form of relationship. And they've consistently done that and faked some type of agreement or some type of nonsense conduct on the basis of my continued activity and their availability to make it available to the public. And I've never agreed to any of it.
Investigators searched Howell's van back in 2004.
Now, if you want to investigate a murder, or you want to investigate a crime, with some serious crime, I have no problem about the police authorities looking at all of that data, not making it available to the public commercially, but looking at all of that data and looking at it however long back it goes, looking at all of that data, okay, and using it to convict people for criminal activity on what's been witnessed on these implants, and you can use all of it for prosecution. I've got no problem, I will comply completely, but I don't want you making it available commercially to the public.
You can't necessarily prove
and if you do, I want to get paid for it, you know?
But a reasonable person could come to that conclusion. So with a very circumstantial case.
And so, if you actually look at some of this brainwashing fucking crap that they come up with, some of this hypnotizing people to kill themselves, fucking psychotic, psychopath fucking video shit that they make, they're using pictures of beautiful actresses and fantastic famous people and all these great stars and really great people. They're using all of this stuff to make it look like it's some sort of reality show, celebrity thing. It isn't, and it never will be, okay? This shit is sex offence, fucking genocidal torture designed to kill people. And that's what the whole thing is. And no matter how nice they may look or how much sedatives they take so that they look like they're normal, they have spent the last 15, God knows how many, 15, 20 years, however long they've been able to get away with it, creating the most horrific, disgusting obscenities in sexual art and murder that you can possibly imagine. They are so deranged, these people are so evil, it's satanic. It can't be described as anything other than just completely satanic. I'll show you the metal detectors picking up the implants in the eyes and the head, and I found it in other people as well. It's not just me. It's other people who they're trying to patsy for their crimes, other people that they're trying to create fake realities of lunacy, and they're making the authorities believe it, they're making the police believe it, they're making the public believe it.
to hit the
But what's the reality about myself? What do? I'll tell you what I do. I research things to cure diseases. I have the cure for cancer. I mean, how much is that fucking worth if they pretend they own that? You know? I have the cure for cancer. Now, you could call me crazy, but if you get a valid expert and professional in genetics or oncology to look at it and say to them, well, is this guy crazy or does he really have a valid claim to the cure for cancer? I will tell you that oncologist and that specialist will tell you, well, I'll tell you what, he's had a bloody good crack at it because it looks good to me.
To the victim's family members.
And that's what the oncologist or the genetics expert will say from Harvard or Oxford University, some of the best schools and universities in the world. When I say to people, I found a way to make people live for hundreds of years on some stem cell therapy treatment, and here's my years of research on it and my dissertation on age-related diseases, these experts in Oxford and Harvard are going to say, well, bloody hell. They'll say that is the best fucking thing I've ever seen before. Are you willing to take that chance and ask those experts? That's the problem. Or are you not willing and you're going to make your opinion on something that you can't prove and you have no insight into, but you're going to make your opinion on it and say that it's rubbish. You know, you're going to rubbish it and denigrate it because, you know, just because you have some resentfulness about me or you have some hatred or discrimination against me or something.
I murdered 7 people, and I put all of their bodies behind a strip mall in New Britain, Connecticut.
And that cellmate was not from that particular area, is able to draw a pretty detailed diagram of where William Howe told them these bodies were buried. And sure enough, behind a subway, William Howe's, what he called his garden, was located.
It wasn't a perfect map, but it kind of gave a general sense of where...
Now you know what's going on in this country. Okay, and now let's take it to the next level. Okay, because it's not only just about trying to murder me, and a sophisticated, complex design of technology designed just to kill people and make them as miserable as you possibly can. Okay, there's also something else happening here. You're looking at something called, when these people who are running these scams have faked their ratings by following me around in my career as a comedian, okay, as a good fucking comedian, I tell you that now, a better comedian than they'll ever be in their entire fucking lives, right? Once they found out that, hold on a sec, this guy's getting global ratings, how did they try and compete with those global ratings? They tried saying, these serial killers and these perverts, they started saying that it was their scams that were globally popular, right? Now, do you know what happens when you make a scam globally popular? You have economic crashes like 2008, when all the estate agents were selling dodgy fucking loans, you know, to get commission out of it, and then that caused the hedge fund disaster in the property, and then collapsed the entire global economy.
Additional information that he just didn't provide to us.
Now, the COVID-19 is a unisexual virus, which means that when you go through the mitotic pathway to a daughter cell of that virus, and you go through, what's it called, when the DNA, you know, duplicates itself in the new cell, there is, with recombination it's called, there is no way that viruses can crossbreed, okay, just so you're clear, okay, so that's a fact, regardless of what people will tell you. So that means that COVID-19 would have had to have been, when you look at it, when it's a mixture between a camel virus, a deadly camel virus in the Middle East, and a SARS virus in China, that is a fact that that thing was spliced together, okay, and made on purpose as a deadly airborne virus, okay? And why did they do it? So they could make a lot of money out of pharmaceuticals, okay?
Your victims don't.
That's a scam.
I might be alive, Ann, but
That is a scam, you know, to make money out of pharmaceuticals. So like the 2008 crash, an estate agent scam. And then who are these estate agent scientists then who are doing these things? And then 15 years later or whatever, or 10, how many years later is it?
It's
15 years later, 2022 COVID-19 scam, and they wiped out 100 million people in the world to make money out of fucking pharmaceuticals and destroyed the economic growth of the entire world. The biggest fucking Nazi disaster in history, okay? The biggest, nastiest, scandalous fucking disaster that has ruined everybody's life on the planet, apart from a few little pricks who invested in pharmaceuticals.
There's got to be something like that really.
Now, I thought Hitler was bad, but that makes Hitler's little, you know, pharmaceutical, whatever it is, medical crime thing that he was doing on Jews, it makes Hitler look like a little bit of a Boy Scout when you see how many people have died from COVID-19, right? And every time you look at some of the major fucking disasters that have ever hit this country or this planet or wherever, they're all because of scams. Scams of weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. There was no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq unless it was COVID-19, you know. And now, when you realise, okay, that this isn't some sort of reality show that they've created, right? They've got a bunch of people sitting around all day watching this situation, working out how to scam people in their homes, scam them out of their business money, scam them out of their data, scam them out of their fucking copyright, scam them out of their contractual sales. This is all out complete and total fucking parallel market touting of other people's business data and their success and claiming that they're attributed to it.
As he controlled the killer avatar, he was
So,
getting ideas.
I'm not being funny, right? I'm not being funny, but okay.
Just like
What people are doing when they're watching this website is designed, okay, for people to watch the British society look at ways to mass popularise scams on the British authority. Look at national security crimes, okay? What are national security crimes? Rape, which is a whole genocide. Medical crimes, a genocide. Large-scale economic crimes, national security.
They're not patterns of behaviour that we
Serious violent offences, national security. It can come under national security, and commissioning terrorist offences, national security, right? These people are watching British society and they're saying they blame our society for why there's billions of people in the world starving, okay, and why they've got no fucking money and they're fighting to the death over food. And they blame countries and rich societies and rich countries like us because of our economic policies for why that happens. So it is a activism against British or Western society to try and break down and look at how our system works. Right under the noses of the NHS, right under the noses of the police when they're watching everything, and they're seeing how much can they get away with, okay, right under the noses of the regulatory authorities and the government, how much can they get away with when they're trying to kill people, they're trying to destroy people's business, trying to destroy people's lives as a covert war against the indigenous and minority groups in those countries. That's why they're watching it. That's why they're doing it. That's what this is. That's why you don't get to hear this bit. That's why when I promote this and put it online and you find out the truth of what's happening here, you don't get to see this bit because they're cutting it all out and they're trying to make a business. They're trying to fund a business out of these things and make money out of them and say that it sells to make a front business for their criminal activity to break down at the heart of our society and our communities and destroy everything to cause more and more disasters. What's the main thing that correlates with every major economic disaster in the world? Conflict. As soon as you run out of money and you haven't got enough money to fund your own defence, somebody tries muscling in on some territory somewhere.
Able to empathise made him more of a threat.
James Fairweather is actually a
So these, and you will look at these people and they will just look like spastic tramps when you talk to them. That's what they look like, spastic drunks. And do you know why they look like spastic drunks? Because everything that comes out of their mouth is just some dreamy, weird, sick, batty rape shit, right? They're disgusting. And they're being used at every systematic level of this whole thing. They're all being used at different levels.
Excluded from school.
to break down and target somebody and target the surveillance, make it available to the public to use it against that community and against those people, and ultimately against the entire national system of people in types of situations like this, telling communities that they're going to make a lot of money out of it, showing people flashing around a load of cash, you know, and saying they're really successful from doing this, and then all over the country, serial killer implants, surveillance designed on major economic crime, rapes, you know, as some type of genocide designed to fucking rip apart and destroy the fucking country, destroy the fucking economy, right? Not just in covert wars, but in passive attacks of negligence and lack of ability to regulate things and ignoring things and allowing them to happen because they like this guy rather than they like the white guy. And that's why there's fucking racism and right-wing fucking problems in this fucking country and fucking Brexit, because everybody's suffering from the same fucking shit everywhere they go, and they just blame it on a different colour. That's as much as they can determine out of it.
Obsessed with violent pornography.